It is a delight to be here today with Ari Nessel, who, after an epiphany in 1997, changed the way he related to food. His heart opened up to the impact every person's life has on countless beings and at the world at large. Soon after this insight, Ari had a vision of himself attaining his worldly goals and dreams, yet left feeling empty inside. This led him to ground his life into practices such as mindfulness, compassionate eating, philanthropy, servant leadership, and transformational entrepreneurship. Ari hosts and leads meditation workshops, retreats, frequently meets with political leaders on how we can advance our food system away from animal agriculture, and seeks to create the causes and conditions for a major reduction in global industrialized meat production. On the side, Ari invests in startups that seek to disrupt factory farming and founded a business that redevelops commercial real estate to be as carbon neutral, water efficient, and community oriented as possible. Ari actively experiences the challenges of being a modern day yogi and the delusion that life can be compartmentalized into separate boxes such as family, work, service, health, and spirit. He remains constantly challenged to live his life in alignment with his values and to utilize the numerous privileges he's been given to turn seeds into blossom and blossom into fruit. Ari shares with his wife, Becky, a doctor who cares for underserved populations, the desire to serve others and act as a role model for their two young boys. Ari, thank you so much for taking time to talk today.
Thank you, Rabbi Shmuly. It's an honor.
So, let's talk about eating first. I'm not alone that I feel a lot of emotion when I eat. Am I eating too much? Am I eating too little? Am I eating it healthy enough? Not healthy enough? How much time do I have to eat? I have some stress around it. Maybe I'm feeding other people, and so I've got to manage that. How can we think about eating in a way that can nourish us on a deeper level?
Such a important question. I think we underestimate like our food choices in so many ways. Probably the most impactful in our health. It's one of the most impactful we have on the lives of others, and it impacts our just general vitality. And it's an oversight in terms of how it integrates with our values. So I think the first thing is to take inventory on your question. Like, how do we think about what we eat? Is like, what kind of a way to eat would be aligned with the person that I seek to be, in terms of, maybe you've got health issues and you want to be healthier. You want to prevent disease. You have children and you want to how much that way our parents eat, we influences the way our children eat. So how much I want to be a role model for people around me. Or if you're in charge of buying or cooking for other people, what you want to infuse their vitality with. And then, of course, what we eat in terms of how are others harmed by it. I think in general, you can take a look at almost any choice we make these days, and there's no perfect choice. There's never a perfect choice. We have a very opaque food system. That you don't know what are the consequences of the choices or how things are brought to your plate or how they're made.
Right.
But there's some things we can probably hypothesize, get some good ideas from. And so I think some people think, oh, it's better to buy local, probably more so than not. People think about it's better to have a relationship with the person making it, something, it has fewer product ingredients in it. That's probably better than not. But I think as you emphasize, Rabbi Shmuly, we underestimate the importance of, the constituents of our food, specifically around if it requires animal protein, and just the whole process that goes through and that kind of harm that's built into that system today. Yeah. So in terms of we eat, I think the thing is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and try to move, take a stock where you are and move towards better habits. Eating healthier, having less animal protein in your diet, and having less processed foods.
I love it. And so this spiritual dimension of seeing the invisible beyond what's on our plate, seeing the worker, the humans behind this, seeing the non-human animals and how they've been impacted, seeing the land, seeing our own bodies, and really this eating experience kind of lifting up our full consciousness to what we're connected to and what we're involved in. So thank you for that. How do you think about, you and I don't eat any animal products, But like, how do you think about your relationship with animals? I don't mean like your dog, or like if you see a cow and you pet them, but like, how do you, on a spiritual perspective, think about kind of cohabiting this world with them?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you speak a lot about and speaks to me is sort of how is this question of how do our actions affect those we don't know directly,
Mhm.
right? Those are maybe 3 degrees away from us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of a story related to your question about our food choices that talks to the difficulty of making wise and skillful choices. A friend of mine not long ago was leading the yoga on a retreat to the rainforest with this environmental group. And while he was there, one of the indigenous tribe members asked him where he got his shoes from. And he said to the man, Nike made them. And the guy said, is Nike a friend of yours? And he went on to explain to the gentleman, Nike's a company, they have these factories, I actually don't know where all the process came from. And my friend Pete said to him, rather than say back to Pete, he says, everything I have, I can tell you where it came from in the forest and who made it. When I reflect on my life, there are very few things that I have in my house and in my life that I've purchased that I can have that relationship. And so there's a difficulty in making more moral choices. And so many of our moral choices we don't realize are just based on what we consume. But there are some general overviews that you could say that if something requires the killing of someone, you can very quickly know that's harmful. Where it might be hard to know if other things was made in a factory somewhere else, or how well they were paid the wages, or were rainforests burned down for that product. So it's actually eating plant-based is a simplifying assumption, at least on a level where there's so much opacity, to make better choices.
Beautiful, beautiful. There's so many toxic emotions that can be in the animal welfare, animal rights world, because some of us feel rage around the abuses. Some of us feel urgency around climate change. Some of us really have our finger on the pulse of the suffering in a way that feels very raw. How do we hold that dark side and not turn away from it? Of of the cardiac disease that is so pervasive, the abuses of factory farming, like the urgency of climate change, all of this stuff, and yet stay calm and joyful in all of it.
No. Well, I think of this poem I read that talked about how if your heart is like a small stream or a stagnant body of water, adding a little toxins to the water makes the water putrid. But if you make your heart like a large flowing river, you can pour almost unlimited kinds of toxins into it, and those purify. They become overwhelmed by the continuous flow of water. So it's a big part about building our capacity in some ways. And I think, spiritually, for me, and I imagine for you as well, it's been a big impetus for me to take on more of the suffering in the world, in Jewish liturgy, bearing witness to the suffering in so many ways. I also think of that there is also the ability to see that the joy that comes from compassionate action. I think so much it's a subtle distinction, but are we paying attention to the suffering, or are we paying attention to the longing to the reduced suffering that we feel? And if we pay attention to just the suffering, we get brought down and it feels heavy. If we pay attention to that part of us that cares, that feels connected, that wants to reduce the suffering, then we're paying attention to the strong heart qualities. And that has been shown in science to be regenerative. And sometimes we don't notice the difference. And it can be, like I said, subtle, but they've shown on brain scans, it makes all the difference in the world between it being able to bring us up and fulfill us and rise our sense of vitality, or does it actually bring us, is it an empathy that makes us connect to the what's wrong with humanity, what we don't like about them, and feel disgruntled?
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So one last question for you, and you've kind of been dancing around this already, but to kind of to just, to take it to the next level, what is the relationship between your veganism and your meditation practice, your spiritual practices at large? Like, how do those inform each other?
Yeah. Well, they kind of co-arose together. And it makes all the sense for me in the world that they co-arose, that like meditation, helps incline mindfulness, and mindfulness helps us to make more informed choices. It creates a space between stimulus and response. Instead of being, having our reactive tendencies that follow a patterns that would have been infused in us by culture, by family, by heredity, by genealogy, we get to have more agency and choice to respond differently. So mindfulness has been really helpful for me to see the causes and conditions of choices, and what happens if I continue the same consistent response, and it maybe choose differently if it seems more wise and skillful. So from a spiritual standpoint, it's helped me see my interconnected with all life. That it's hard to find a separate identifiable Ari. That I'm so integrated with the world around me, and that as the world around me, if I can help in some way support its growth, its journey towards living with more morality, more kindness, more compassion, more joy, the more it's like a mirror, and it comes back to me, and I feel those qualities as well. So it's like an interbeing. And so for me, the process of veganism and plant-based eating is a clear way of creating less suffering and pain and more consideration and interconnection in the world. And when that arises in the world, it's I get to be a beneficiary of it.
I love that. Friends, let's take this inspiring message to heart around how we can all be agents for change inside and out, and how our inner lives and outer lives are connected in combating suffering in the world. And may we all be forces for healing and for strength. And as we approach Pesach, in the coming weeks, think about our role in bringing liberation in the world.